6 months after the arrival of the letters, the Broaddusses decided to sell the house, but could not, due to the rumours surrounding 657 Boulevard. The Broaddusses also attempted to sue the previous owners of the house, the Woods family, for not disclosing the threatening letter they had received. However, the judge threw out the case, as there was no evidence that they had intentionally hid the letter, nor believed it was a genuine threat. This attracted media attention, and the house was soon the subject of a media frenzy. By Christmas 2015, the Broaddusses considered selling the house to a developer who would be able to tear it down and split it into 2 plots. This stirred anger amongst the local residents, who did not hold back with their disapproval. But it only resulted with threatening letters being sent to the neighbours supporting the Broaddusses' plans. I'll go into a little more detail about these friends of the Broaddusses letters a little later. The plots would each be 3 feet too small for the mandated size of the neighbourhood, and so it could not be done. After the Broaddusses appealed this to the Neighbourhood Planning Board, the judges unanimously rejected the decision, and so 657 Boulevard remained one house. However, it was noticed that in 2018, the same board approved splitting up a different lot near the house, and that the lot required a larger area than what the Broaddusses had requested. I'm sorry, but the phrase, "it isn't what you know, it's who you know," comes to mind. After the short break, we will look at Derek Broaddus' own investigation and how one reclusive set of neighbours came under the microscope.
This show is brought to you by courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for Haunted Rooms guided tours at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times and over 16s only unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could, and has, taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. The Gift and Craft Shop is open daily from Monday to Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m, selling a wide variety of paranormal items, books, merchandise, stock, magazines, and cats. Why not pay them a visit to pick up a gift with a difference? Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective discounts. And why not download the app, available on iOS and Android for only $3.99 to keep up to date with what's coming up at the centre.
Derek decided to do some of his own investigating and decided to start with the closest thing to the actual house. So he started with the neighbours, the Langfords. The Langfords were an old family with roots in the community. They consisted of Mother, Peggy, and several of her children. Although they were all middle-aged at this point, they all still lived in the same house as their mother. The one son that did stand out was Michael, who was a bit of a recluse and was described as harmless but odd. Derek suspected him after he and the Langfords attended a neighbourhood barbecue soon after the first letter had arrived. They claimed that the Langfords' father had died about 12 years ago, So this could explain why the watcher had said that they had been watching the place for the better part of 2 decades. Not only that, but due to the positioning of the houses, Langford would have been able to see the port space where the watcher had mentioned their daughter painting. Langford was also known to spook neighbours by literally watching them as he would walk through their backyards and looking through their windows. I had heard some sources say that Michael Langford was schizophrenic, but I cannot find anything to confirm this. On the whole, though, they never really caused any issues. Their house did sit right next to the Broaddus's, which was enough for Derek to target his sights on them. To Derek, Michael was the watcher, and he was going to prove it. But before he was even able to get this chance, law enforcement had already beaten him to it, as they had already interviewed Michael Langford and dismissed him as a suspect. They knew he seemed to fit the profile, but they had no evidence linking him, and everything else was simply circumstantial. Abby Langford, Michael's sister, spoke out against the ongoing investigation, and she stated that the police were harassing her family. Another piece of evidence was the discovery of DNA on one of the letters. With the DNA belonging to a woman, the police considered that Michael's sister, Abby, may have been the watcher, and the letter's DNA was compared with the DNA from a water bottle that Abby had used. It was not a match. Shortly after the DNA test, the authorities stopped investigating the possibility that any of the Langfords could be the watcher, dropping them all as suspects. The Broadduses were never told why. While Westfield police were surveying the house one night, at around 11 p.m, a car stopped in front of the house. The car was traced back to a young man who lived in a town nearby, while her boyfriend, who was known as the Gamer, lived on the same block as 657 Boulevard. When questioned by police, the woman informed them that her partner was into some really dark video games, possibly including a game where he played a character referred to as the Watcher. However, while the Gamer agreed to be questioned by police, he never showed up to the interviews. Police did not have enough evidence to force him to come, and so he was never examined. The list of suspects ranged from the neighbours, mainly the Langfords, previous buyers who were interested in purchasing the house, former work colleagues of Derek's, or maybe even a former old flame of Maria's. The list goes on and on and on. After poring over the letters over and over again, Derek had an idea. He still strongly felt that the letters were from the Langfords, mainly from Michael, with one of the letters saying,
657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it's my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to be good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass, and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone.
Derek devised a once-and-for-all plan to see if the Langfords were behind this madness. They sent a letter to the Langfords informing them that they were going to be demolishing the house in order to gain a response from one of them. Surely, if the Watcher was so passionate about the house, the mere thought of destroying it would send him or her completely over the edge. But nothing happened. No response. Not a single letter from the Watcher was received. After 6 months, the Broaddus' family finally admitted defeat and put 657 Boulevard back on the market. This caused a lot of legal issues that the family then had to work out. But by now word had got around about the letters and the house, so much so that nobody was willing to live in a house with its very own Watcher. It got so bad that the Broadduses were obligated by law to show every potential buyer of the house the Watcher's letters as a forewarning. Naturally, this snowballed and put off anyone who was remotely interested in purchasing 657 Boulevard, and it stayed that way for almost 2 years, while every lead went nowhere and every buyer backed out. The story of the Broadduses and the Watcher eventually ended up online, where the Broadduses were accused of making the story up to get out of purchasing the house without taking a financial hit, and that it's just a way of gaining media attention to try and get a movie deal. They were even called cowards for letting a few letters stop them from moving into their dream home. The trolls and keyboard warriors came out in full negative force against them. Things for the family seemed all but lost. The family were in a major predicament by this time. Beaten, bruised and run down with the psychological torture, the family decided to rent out the home. But unfortunately, the family had such a bad reputation with the locals that they decided they didn't even want to live in the area anymore. In 2016, about 2 years after the first letter had arrived, they found a family willing to rent the home. The new renter of the house wanted a legal document drawn up that allowed them to back out of the lease if they received any letters from the Watcher and not face any legal repercussions. Within 2 weeks, the house received a letter addressed to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. This time, he was mad.
Violent winds and bitter cold, to the vile, spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbours who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighbourhood and mocked me. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempt at assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to AT. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you